hate you. I hate you.
Johnny with Tiger Bomb MMA. Today I'm going over UFC 309. Jones versus Miocic, coming out of New York City. The shittiest fucking place on earth. Fuck the Yankees, by the way. Madison Square Garden. I'm going to give you my thoughts and predictions on the entire 12-bout card. No cap. Bust out those Timbos, baby. Wear those ear pods. That's all they fucking do in New York. Anyways, as you can tell, I'm still salty from New York. Those motherfuckers throwing shit at me wearing my Dodgers gear. But ultimately, I'm going to give you my quick thoughts on the entire 12-bout card. Before I do that, I did want to give you my thoughts on the McGee versus Prates card. Total, what was that, 11 bouts. I went 9 out of 11, so I only got 2 wrong, a.k.a. the 2 moronic Brazilians. I picked Tricoli. Brother. I knew he sucked, right? I knew he sucked, but I'm like, he doesn't suck that bad. I was wrong about that. And Pinheiro, I knew she sucked, and she actually impressed me a little bit. Jillian Robertson's stand-up is absolute trash, but, was what it was. Mullins goes through that one. Girl made her cry on the internet. Pretty embarrassing. Obviously, as we mentioned, Tricoli gets subbed by a 4-2 guy. Blackshear, the improvements we saw from Blackshear is the same improvements I wanted to see versus Jackson, and I was right about it. His striking got better, and I'm liking what I'm seeing from Blackshear going forward. Him getting a finish like that against a tough guy like Stamen, very impressive. What else did we have on here? We had Zaleski defeating that bum, Scrogate, whatever his name was. Yeah, he wasn't going to lose that fight. Gomez doing what she did. I had either a knockout or by decision, mostly based off of the knockout power kind of scaring our girl here, KK, but it was what it was. Abdul Malik, round 1 knockout, cashes me out for my first leg of my parlay. Pinheiro, as we mentioned, I thought she made good improvements. Ultimately, she made some mistakes in there, but I did like what I saw, and I hope they keep her. And mostly because I feel bad because I don't want that household to go and starve. And, I'm not a bad guy like that. I won't donate to their cause, but I'm not that bad of a guy. I don't want her to get cut. But I thought her improvements were good. And what we saw from Robertson, did I say Robertson, she sucks. She can't strike. And if she can't get a takedown, she looks like absolute dog shit. Straight booty. Bolanos, I had him as a dog. I did bet a little bit of money on him. And, the fade continues when it comes to the Dana White Contender Series fighters. DeRitter. Now, here's the thing about DeRitter. He cashed my second leg of my parlay, made 3 units on that little nice 2-legger. I'm going to give him some slack. Not in the sense of, I'm trying to cope because I picked a guy and I put some money on him. I think he was desperate enough to try to get the finish. He couldn't get it. He tried to get the finish as quickly as he could, and by doing so, he had to spam the takedowns. What I saw from him is that he's fucking awkward on the feet, but he was effective enough to actually drop Mearshart. And had he not necessarily gone for those takedowns and just try to strike with them, I think he would have found a finish, and the takedown would have come easier because he would have knocked his bitch ass down. Ultimately proved that he does have the better jiu-jitsu. But yeah, I'm going to be very wary about betting him in the future, especially at minus 320. And then Prates easily defeats the first round of Magnies. He still needs to defeat 99 more Magnies, but ultimately 1 is good enough for me to say that he's, on top of the world right now. So smoking and, fireball, whiskey, and all this shit is just the highest level of MMA. But yeah, let's get started with the actual card at hand, the 309. I'm not certain where I'm going to watch it just because, I have my issues with Jon Jones since years ago. I fucking hated Jon Jones.
I hate you.
And I'll talk about that later. But, I'm thinking about going to go see it at the movie theater, which I like seeing it at the theater, but, I usually just reserve that for Poatan fights. So I know John's been talking mad shit about wanting to fight Poatan. So if that does happen, I'll be front and center. Hopefully, Poatan being the first man to knock out Jon Jones. I'll be ecstatic. But yeah, first fight of the night here. We've got interesting bout at flyweight. 125. Eduardo Moura is moving up, a.k.a. Ronda. And she is a plus 125 underdog against Veronica Hardy. She's minus 160. So it's an interesting fight. And I'm going to try not to spend too much time on it because I do find it to be a fascinating fight, especially if you're planning on betting it. Because on the one side, you've got Veronica Hardy. She's a very, very good fighter, right? I do think she's a bit undersized for 125, but given the fact that, she's already having kind of some cardio issues, and I'm not going to disregard Moura's cardio issues, but we don't know at 125. At 115, she struggled to make weight, and she slowed down in the only fight that she actually had to physically fight a girl in the UFC. She's just been kind of running through these girls, getting her takedowns. So I'm intrigued because Veronica Hardy is the faster of the two. She's got amazing striking, very, very, very good striking. And to think that she was a minus 300 almost, and I did take that line. It was between plus 260 to plus 320. I got something along those lines against Juliana Miller. I felt that was like a disrespect, and I cashed out on it. She's very good. She's got good jiu-jitsu. She's very quick. She's going to hit harder. She's going to be the faster of the two on the feet. Ultimately, though, I am worried about the physicality. Eduardo Moura's not going to have to cut all that weight, and I'm curious to see what she looks like when she is, number one, the bigger girl, because she's going to be, 2 inches taller and have a 2-inch reach advantage. The reach advantage isn't necessarily going to come into play, although I don't necessarily think Moura's striking's terrible. I think it's more of the, as I mentioned with the Ritter, when you focus so much on trying to get the takedown and your opponent knows that, your striking is going to lack because you're going to get tired from going for those takedowns. Now, if I think Moura shells out and tries to go for a takedown, I think she's physically strong enough to get Hardy to the ground and control her there, maybe even get back control, get the body triangle in. Hardy's got good jiu-jitsu. It's been ever improving. She's always been very good off of her back, but the physicality of these bigger women, I think, is going to come into play because I picked against her on a few occasions, specifically against Jamie Lynn Horth, because I thought she was going to be able to hold her against the cage and just kind of eat some minutes, get her to the ground, control her. And to an extent, she did that. It's just that she was not smart enough to do that from the beginning where she knew she had the advantage. Here, Moura, I think her striking is going to look a little bit better. It's just about the game plan and how comfortable she is. I am expecting to see a much healthier version of Eduardo Moura. I think this is going to be a better suit for her. I don't think she has to continuously go down and wait and beat up these smaller women. I think with more strength and more water, she's going to be able to do well. I'm going to pick Moura to actually win this one by a decision. I'm expecting her to look better, but it is a huge gamble because we have no idea. Maybe she misses weight here. Maybe she hasn't necessarily progressed. The fact that she did go to a split decision against Gomez where she looked bad, and let me be honest with you, man, I think in a separate world she could have been given that nod. Not to say it's the correct decision. Don't quote me on that shit. Don't be putting them fucking words on me, them bad jujus on me, Ricky Bobby. I'm just saying that in a different world, she could have been given the decision, and maybe she could have eked by. But now that she has an official loss on her record, it gives her time to reflect. Is she going to get better? Is she going to get worse? I think it's easier to swallow a fact that you got tired, you fought a really tough girl, and then you can make some improvements. I'm going to expect those improvements here against Veronica Hardy. Hardy's hotter, but I got to go with more on this one. I think the plus money is a little too intriguing for me. Next bout, we've got Oban Elliott versus Basil Hafez. Now, off the bat, I'm going with Elliott here. He is minus 155. Come back on Hafez is plus 125. Both grapplers. Hafez, I think, is the more credentialed, especially with his jiu-jitsu. He has power. He has a good chin. What I don't necessarily like about Hafez in this fight is that he showed me that he is willing to go toe-to-toe with Mickey Gall, and Mickey Gall was landing on him when he kind of felt the need to land on him. I think when Mickey stopped being a little bitch and started throwing those straight punches, he was landing on Hafez, and there were some 30-27s in that fight that I didn't necessarily agree with. But ultimately, to be honest with you, there's a whole story about that fight with Hafez and Mickey Gall, and I'm on an airplane, and I have like a G on Hafez on a parlay, and I'm fucking getting into a fight with a stewardess, that stupid bitch. But ultimately, when I finally watched the fight, because I didn't have internet on that flight, I was happy that he got the victory, but it was a pretty nasty, nasty fight. I think he was able to get taken down a little bit too easily in that fight. I think he was a little too eager to throw haymakers and hard punches. No technique there. Against Elliott, my biggest concern with him is that I've seen him get out grappled, but in his fight with Preston Parsons, I was thoroughly impressed in being incorrect about that prediction. I thought Parsons was going to be able to handle him on the mat because he's a solid wrestler. I think his striking was going to be better, especially when he mixes things in. But Oban Elliott, who I don't necessarily consider to be a great fighter, I think there's a bit of a cap for him. I think his consistency is what's going to make him frankly, the favorite here, and why I like him as a favorite. The consistency in the striking. I think his striking is going to be better. I think his takedown defense is going to be better. I think when needed, he can get takedowns and top control enough to be given the nod. So I'm going to go by decision Oban Elliott, more so because as long as he is defensively sound, which he's been proving that. I think if you do hurt Elliott, you can definitely wobble him. I've seen him hurt many a time. I think it can be finished. But for Hafez, who's a bit too predictable with him having, not necessarily the best distance management, if Hafez does land a big shot, I can see Elliott wobbling all over, and props to Hafez. I actually kind of like his brawling type of style in certain aspects where he he gets hit, like in that fight with McGee, he gets hit and he's like, bring it on. Fun and entertaining. I don't think that acting is going to work here. I think Elliott's going to just kind of jab him, pepper him up, and get takedowns when needed. So I'll go with Elliott by a decision. Mickey Gall versus Brahimaj. Frankly, the bummiest bum fight of the card here. We've got -15 on Gall. Come back on Brahimaj is -105. So there's two methods to play this, right? We've got either Mickey Gall just straight. You can go with Brahimaj by a sub. Gall's never really been finished like that. He's been finished, but never by submission. I think his jiu-jitsu might be just too good to get subbed by Brahimaj. Brahimaj, I consider him to be a bum from Fortis. The dude, he's a one-trick pony. He gets you to the ground, and he tries to dominate you there, and if you can't do that, he's really got nothing else. He will just continuously spam, which can be dangerous within itself, especially if Mickey Gall doesn't have the takedown defense to really stuff that. I think Mickey, if, say, Brahimaj does shoot in for a lazy double, Gall can maybe try to go for a guillotine. Same thing for Brahimaj. They're both jiu-jitsu guys, but I think Mickey Gall's striking has improved enough that his punches are a bit straighter. He's very slow. He's very awkward, and it's really hard to gauge Mickey because we got him in the UFC 7-6 overall. He fought CM Punk. He beat him, and then he's just been looking never improved enough. Brahimaj, man, I'd never been high on this guy. I know he's live always for a sub. He can get you down. He can dominate you there if he can get you down and dominate you. But if he can't, this could be like the ultimate slot fest where I just want no part of it. I don't even know how to cap it when it comes to props. I think Mickey has the better striking, but Brahimaj's shown toughness enough to kind of get his ass whooped and survive unless you burst his eardrum. Brahimaj, I think eventually he can get it to the ground. He might be able to get a submission late or possibly just ride out a decision. I'm very up in the air about this one because neither guy has really shown me the definitive factor that's going to make them the winner in my eyes. So with this being kind of like that slot fest, I'm just going to lean on Mickey here. I think Mickey can. Man, this is what sucks, man. I think Mickey's not good. But if Mickey can stuff the takedowns and just kind of keep Brahimaj at distance, maybe just stuff the takedowns, maybe get a takedown of his own, it could be a decision for Mickey. It could be a decision for either man. I'm going to say Mickey basically just based off of maybe damage landed on the feet. I think it's going to be really razor thin. I'll go Mickey. I don't want anything to do with that. Next bout we've got at heavyweight, Marcin Tybura versus Diniz. Obviously a striker versus grappler matchup. What are the odds? They're not showing me. Let me look them up. I'm assuming it's going to be Diniz a favorite here. Actually, he's the dog here. -145 for Tybura. Come back on Diniz is roughly around +120. Very easy to predict, right? You can either go, obviously, Diniz by knockout or Tybura by submission or TKO. It's not going to go the distance. I think, Tybura's got way more experience. He's been on a good run as of late, but he's 39 years old, chinny as fuck. He gets hurt every single fight recently, but his tenacity to try to survive that and take these heavyweights down and then maul them on the ground, it can be a dangerous thing for you. I think his takedowns are much better. I think he's a better grappler, obviously, but if Diniz can keep it on the feet, which he has shown a much improved takedown defense, especially against his last opponent in Carl Williams, who I guess he was specifically told do not grapple. And then when he did grapple, he easily took him down. I think doesn't go the distance or under 1.5 on this fight. Diniz can definitely knock him out. It's just when he gets overexcited trying to get that finish is when he can get in trouble. So I'm going to go with Diniz by knockout just because I am just sick and tired of seeing Tybura get dominated, hurt, and then come back and win. So I'm going to say knockout round number 1 for Diniz. Just mind getting taken down. Avoid that shit. Put an end to this Tybura train. And I actually think that if he does knock out Tybura, they will cut him. So hopefully he does not recover from that shot, or Diniz does anything stupid. I think Diniz, for an 8-0 guy, great kickboxer, but he's not necessarily proven when it comes to the fight IQ. He can't get back up from bottom. And I think if Tybura does shell out completely, like say, fuck it, I'm taking him down, he can probably get him down. But I think Diniz, he's a big boy. He's a big, strong boy. And I think he's going to be able to stuff at least that first takedown, make Tybura uncomfortable, hurt him on the feet, and just kind of try to do a walk-off knockout. And I think that's going to be the best shot for him. Just hit him hard enough for when he falls. No follow-up punches. Just have Herb Dean or whoever the fuck just stop the fight. So I'll go with Diniz round number 1 knockout. Next bout, we've got Damon Jackson moving up to 155, which is funny because he did not miss weight his last fight. His opponent did in Chepe Mariscal. And now he's the one moving up, which, could be beneficial for him. He used to fight at lightweight back in the day. Dropped down to featherweight. Now he's fighting Jim Miller, the always dangerous Jim Miller, plus 110 for Jim. So I'm going to pick Damon Jackson because I think he's improved enough to be able to beat an aging, tough veteran in Jim Miller. But damn well Jim Miller's always live. He's live for the knockout. He's live for the submission. I think at 41 years old, he's been looking the best ever. I mean, you go back, you see the fight with him and Benitez. He's just styling on Benitez. He's styling on these younger guys, knocking out, Jesse Butler with no problem, knocking out, what's his name, Iron Nicholas Moura. But the thing is, Jackson with his improved striking, I think his improved striking defense, his grappling is definitely not better, but with the wrestling advantage, I think it's going to be enough for him to kind of maintain that top control. I like Jackson here for a decision more than likely. He's not going to be able to finish Jim Miller unless we find out Damon Jackson's got ungodly knockout power at 155. He does not. I think he's going to edge this and win out by a decision. I think he's going to have some very tough moments in there against Jim Miller where he might get hurt, but he shoots in, clenches him up, double unders, maybe trips him. Jim's a dog. Do not be surprised if Jim comes out here and just destroys Damon Jackson. But with the momentum I think Damon's had over the last few fights, I think he's just shown more improvement. I think he's got more left in the tank. Not to say Jim does not, but it's closer to empty than it is to full. And I think for Damon, it's a little bit closer to full than it is to empty for his overall career. So give me Damon Jackson by decision, but it is my least confident pick because I do feel that Jim Miller's fucking live here. Jim fucking Miller is Jim fucking live. Next bout, we've got Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders in another bum fucking fight. I hate to say that about Chris Weidman, former champion, dethroned Anderson Silva, but at this time, at this age, in this time of the country, in this part of the country, this time of year, it's a fucking dumpster fire of a fight. I mean, Derek Anders, he's getting dropped out here by Jamie Pickett. He's resorting to wrestling Jamie Pickett because he's so afraid of striking with him. It's a tough fight here because it can go one of two ways, right? Chris Weidman having the home field advantage. Not to say he hasn't completely shit the bed in New York before. I've seen it on a couple different occasions. The fact is, at plus 140, what is he willing to do to win this fight? We saw what he did in his last fight against Bruno, where he's poking him and he's just shoving his fucking fingers in his eyes. He looked improved. And now I must say, him training with his brother-in-law and Wonder Boy, his striking is going to get better. His footwork's going to get better, but he's still an aging middleweight with a bad chin. And is he going to be able to wrestle Eric Anders? Eric Anders, he has improved his wrestling. He's always had the power, but he's not necessarily had the best technique. Not to say that he's wild. He just To me, his striking is just kind of a one punch at a time kind of striker. He doesn't really set things up, but I do think he's going to have the better power between the two, and he's going to want to keep it on the feet, obviously. I think he can get Weidman down, but come on now, just kick the shit out of Weidman's legs. But do I trust Eric Anders to do that? Hell no. I'm reluctantly going to go with Anders to win this one by a decision. I don't like it. I do think that Chris can be live here. You know, he's a former champion, way more experience. He's fought way better competition. It's just when I look at the fights between the two, you know, they both fought really bad competition that they both struggled with to an extent. But Bruno Silva, he fought a guy I don't think belongs in the UFC, and he got embarrassed by that guy in what's his name, Nurdayev. And for Eric Anders, another guy who I don't think belongs in the UFC, and Jamie Pickett, he got dropped by that fucking bum. And now these two guys are fighting each other, and I'm being asked to, I guess no one's really asking me, but I'm being forced to pick between these two guys that I think are way past their prime. One is a, you know, has been, and the other guy's a never was. And I hate saying that, man. I don't want to be a dick, but got to be straight. I am going to go reluctantly with Anders just because I think if he can keep it on the feet, he's got, you know, more power. He's got an easy target, 2 easy targets, 3 actually, both legs and the chin. And Weidman's going to want to resort to getting it to the ground, and I don't know if he's going to be able to do that. I mean, he's still a Division I wrestling champ, but I've seen him on his back way too many times for me not to think that's going to happen. I'm just going to go with Anders by decision. Next bout. Interesting bout here. We've got Jonathan Martinez, who is plus 100, versus Marcus the Maniac McGee, minus 120. So very back and forth contention with this fight. You know, you're thinking, you know, Jonathan Martinez has fought better competition. Marcus McGee, he hasn't really fought anybody. He's 9-1, but he's looked impressive, beating the likes of Bolanos and JP Buys and, you know, destroying Jeremy Newsom. But, you know, Jonathan Martinez, as of late, you know, he's been beating top guys, you know, Vince Morales, that's funny. Cub Swanson, you know, he still got it in the tank. He kicked the shit out of his legs. Said Nurmagomedov, you know, he decisioned him. Adrian Yanez, you know, he was hyped up the ass. TKO'd him with leg kicks, and then he gets destroyed by Jose Aldo. Not a bad loss on your record. Never going to be a bad loss on your record. You lost to a former champion, a GOAT. But what I've always said about Jonathan has always been true. I think he is a good kickboxer, good low kicks, good knees, obviously, and terrible chin. I think his boxing's always been trash. I think in the pocket he can definitely get hurt, and I think McGee has the kind of power, the movement, the fight IQ. I think McGee's time is right now. I think he is definitely rising, and I don't want to necessarily jump on that bandwagon like, oh my God, he's been getting knockouts. I really do see the ability in him. Like his last fight against Bolanos, I said, just take him down. Don't try to strike with him. Just make it easy for yourself. He chose not to do that, and he beat the fucking shit out of him. And I was even more impressed. You know, he didn't have to do that to him. He could have just choked him out. No, he just took his life. He beat the shit out of him on the feet. It was very impressive. And if he is quick enough, I think he can hurt Jonathan on the feet, and I think he can really propel himself in the division. Like, hey, he just beat a guy with all these notable wins and these notable guys on his record, wins or losses. But, man, when I go back and I see him beating the shit out of Turbo Perez, and Turbo lands a beautiful straight punch down the middle, hurts him, what's to say that McGee can't do that? It's just how good is McGee's fight IQ. And I think we're going to get tested here because the fight IQ is going to go to Jonathan Martinez just on paper. I have no idea what Marcus can do because we haven't seen him fight a fighter of this caliber before. And I'm willing to take a shot on McGee. I think he can win this one by knockout. I think he can do it within the first 2 rounds. I'm going to say round number 2. And we get to finally see what I've been saying about Jonathan Salvi Chin Martinez all along. He's got a Salvi chin. You touch him once, you're going to really hurt him. And if you really make him uncomfortable on the feet, primarily with boxing, and we've seen McGee's got really good hands and good power. If you make him uncomfortable, he's going to fight out of himself. He will try to wrestle with Said Nurmagomedov. You know, he won't throw as many low kicks, which he should here, but I want to see how Marcus reacts to those, right? I think he would be smart enough to kind of check those. Just don't take him too much when he does throw those leg kicks, counter with the straights, and I think that's when he's going to catch him. I think he's going to try to bait Martinez into throwing a low kick, or he's going to counter with a straight left hand or a counter hook. I'm very intrigued by this matchup. I'm rooting for Marcus. I want to see what he can do. I want to see him fight better competition, and when you beat Jonathan Martinez, you're going to get nothing but that. So give me McGee by second round knockout. I'm gonna trust him in this one because, again, the whole narrative is he hasn't fought anybody. He's fought nobody. Bums, JP buys. And Martinez has got that record behind him. That doesn't matter. I don't care about the age. I'm only going based off of what I'm seeing visually, and I like what I see from McGee visually. I want to see him get tested, and I think he will, but I think he'll pass this test. Next bout here, we've got Mauricio Ruffy versus James Llontop. Minus 750 for Ruffy. He's going to win this fight. And instead of just talking about it, I'm just going to open the Cerritos. Shit made noise. I'm rich now, so I don't have to get like the conventional bottle openers. Oh, man. The grapefruit is the best one, by the way. Fantastic. But yeah, Ruffy, now that I've wasted time, I'm going with Ruffy by a submission. I'm going to say first, second round. What we know about Ruffy, doesn't matter what Llontop's money line is now. He's plus 525. Holy shit. Maybe it is worth it, actually. Let's just say, fuck it. Let's just put a little bit of money on Llontop in case. $20. Why not? Make a little bit of money there in case, say, Ruffy pulls a massive cuck job. But he won't. He's training with fighting nerds. Man, it feels good to be vindicated about that. Because when I saw Caio Borralho fight and I knew about his team, I'm like, this guy's fucking smart. Like, there's little things about him. I don't want to get into that, but him being the head of that team, I saw things about his fight IQ, like things I cannot quantify without going into like this whole soliloquy about how great his eyes are and his technique and his movement and just the little things that I see that he takes from other fighters. But for that whole team to just be on top right now, there's real no way. Like, just by the transference of that team's energy going into Ruffy, that alone is going to get him the win. But when you talk about Ruffy himself, incredibly dynamic. He's got the McGregor stance, super fucking fast, super creative, does not give a fuck. He will spin into a heel hook, double back fist. This guy is, to me, the most technically gifted and athletic of the guys. Like, he mixes everyone's style up beautifully. He doesn't necessarily just want to strike with you. He will, and he can, and he will knock you out. But he can also grapple. He can get on top. He can choke you out. He can go for subs. And I think that's what he's going to have to do here against Llontop. I think Llontop he's a solid guy. I thought he would do well against Slava Claus. And I think he just had a really bad game plan against Slava. I think had he just kind of bum rushed him, he could have had a better chance. He's got good enough striking, and he showed good enough striking to maybe win a round or two. I say two like he would have won. No, he could have potentially won a second round had certain things from Slava not been there. But with his chin, I think he's got a good chin, and I think Ruffy's going to hit him hard, and I think he's going to maybe rock him, but not enough for him to get put out. I think the Peruvian chin's going to really be there for Llontop. The speed from Ruffy's going to be there, and I think eventually Ruffy's just going to say, fuck it, I'll take him down and sub him. It'll be the easiest thing for him. It'll save himself. That way he can maybe fight again. He hasn't fought that much. He's only 1-0 in the UFC with one nasty knockout against Jamie fucking Malarkey. I think this is going to be the performance for Ruffy where it's like this guy's a massive threat to the division at lightweight. So I am going to pick him to win by a submission. I just got that feeling that he's going to hit Llontop super hard. He's going to think, ah, shit, like, I hit him pretty damn hard. This guy's made out of, like, I don't know, fucking the hardest clay that they can make a flute out of in fucking Peru. And he's going to take him down and just sub him. Not because we've seen him get subbed before in Llontop. I just truly think that Ruffy, he can come out here and we can find out he's got, like, the hardest knees and the hardest elbows, and he'll knock the fuck out of Llontop. But I am trusting Llontop's durability to get him by, to the point where Hoofy's like, fuck this, I'll take you down and sub you. So give me Hoofy by submission. I'm going to say second round. I think he's going to be styling on this kid from the outside, landing on him, doing basketball maneuvers, just whatever the fuck he wants. As long as Hoofy does not completely like have a mental breakdown, I think he wins this fight. He will go second round submission, Hoofy. Next bout, Karine Silva versus Viviane Araujo. Araujo is plus 225. That's a good line for her. You know, she's got the wrestling, she's got the power. And Karine Silva, you know, jiu-jitsu master, very nasty. I think she is definitely the favorite, obviously, minus 295. I'm not sold on the line. I don't think it should be that far apart. I think it should be maybe like minus 185 for Karine Silva, because I think Araujo is live here, mainly to wrestle, get on top, and avoid getting subbed. She's strong enough for at least 2 rounds not to get subbed, and then maybe just clinching against the cage. You know, if Silva can, you know, implement her style, get Araujo to the ground, I'm going to see some magic down there. Reluctantly, it's a female fight. You know, Araujo's up there in age. She's 37. Karine Silva, I've seen the holes in her game where, you know, she can get a bit sloppy sometimes, but on the ground, I think she's absolutely nasty. I think she will be pushing the pace when it comes to going for the takedowns. I don't think Araujo's going to want to get her to the ground. I think there's too much of a threat, so it could be a striking matchup again, like we saw the fight with her, Lipski and Silva. And, yeah, man, like it was not the cleanest performance for Karine Silva, but she got the job done. And here we've got another strong grappler in Viviane Araujo, her last fight against Natalia Silva. You know, only a moron would say that she won that fight or that it was competitive. You know, she held her down or tried to hold her, but anytime at space, you know, Natalia Silva was just raining on her. And that game plan could work here against Karine Silva, but it would be a horrible game plan. I don't want to watch it. I'm going to go with Silva by actually a decision. I think Araujo can avoid getting subbed. I would prefer her to get subbed. I love seeing Brazilian women getting subbed. There's a whole sub-genre on the internet that I like to watch, but ultimately I'll go with Silva by decision. But, you know, I'm not loving the line. Next bout, we've got Bo Nickal versus Paul Craig. Ooh, minus 1,000. My God, minus 1,000 for Bo Nickal. Paul Craig is plus 650. Another guy that you just kind of have to throw some money on in Paul Craig, like just in case Bo Nickal, you know, shits the bed. But apparently Trump's going to be there. Ain't no fucking way Bo Nickal's going to lose in front of Trump. Ain't no fucking way. Ultimately, you know, it's going to be an easy fight for Bo if Paul Craig is still the same chinny guy. You know, Paul, not the best chin. And the only issue that I have here that could lead to maybe Paul Craig getting a submission or a finish over Bo Nickal is that if Bo Nickal is made to be uncomfortable on the feet, I don't think he will. I think his boxing's good enough. I think this is going to be another performance where Bo Nickal's not going to shoot for a takedown. Why bother? Just knock the fuck out of Paul Craig. Just stay safe. You've got the better wrestling. He's not going to take you down. If he does, I don't know, fucking go to the back and I can't say it on the internet, but like end yourself, if you will. Paul Craig, I think his striking's a bit underrated. You know, I've always thought his striking's always been decent enough, like good kicks. It's just that it's Paul Craig. You know, he's often not the better striker, and in this case, although I think he's got the better diversity of strikes, the better striker is going to be Bo Nickal. I think he's going to run through Paul Craig. I think he's going to knock him out. If Bo Nickal goes into the guard of Paul Craig, he deserves everything that might come to him. Whether he gets a finish, great, props to you, but that is a stupid move. Don't do that. You're a 6-0 guy. You're fighting a very experienced guy, a guy who finished a former champion, finished another potential, let's be honest, it won't happen in Ankalaev. He ain't going to be champion. Fuck that guy. But it's a guy that has beaten top contenders by essentially getting his ass beat and then gotcha, bitch. So I'll go with Bo Nickal, round number 1 knockout. I think he's going to run through him in front of Trump, and then he's going to jump the cage, and he's going to have a great old time. So next bout, we've got Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler 2. Now, this fight, I saw the original live in Houston, and I was way into Chandler. Not in the sense like, oh my God, I used to love him. I still love Chandler. Here's a picture of me mogging Chandler. There you go. I love Michael Chandler. Great guy. When I met him, super fucking nice. Dude, salt of the earth kind of guy. But here's the shit about Chandler now. As much as I want him to win, I'm a big fan of his. I've been a fan of his since like years. When I was a kid, I'd watch his fights in Bellator, and I was like, wow, this guy's fucking awesome. Like, he's knocking dudes out with one punch. Then let's not talk about the guy he knocked out, and then his brother came back and got revenge on him. That didn't happen. But Charles Oliveira, like, he is minus 250 here. Michael Chandler plus 200. Michael's always live to get a knockout or a finish. He's got the power. He's got the speed. He's got the physique. He's just a dog. You know, you can hurt him. He'll keep coming, but he can get finished. But ultimately, this is a much easier fight for Charles the first time than it is the first time that they fought. That was before Charles was champion. That was his title shot. He ended up passing that. He got dropped. You know, at that time, Michael Chandler was an absolute beast. And although he is still a beast, I think he's a beast that is better suited for like the carpool lane. You know, like, oh, that's Hap's son, or that's Hap's dad. I think he used to be a fighter. That's how I kind of see Michael Chandler now. Like, I think he's waited too long. He's been on the shelf waiting for McGregor. I think he would have done well against McGregor when it was originally scheduled. But as time goes on, this guy's... Let me explain to you in pro wrestling terms, right? I'll give you the example of Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle, Olympic gold medalist, great wrestler, collegiately, Olympic wrestler, great professional wrestler. And there was a time that he was still looking good. Like, he was up there in age, and he was having good matches from what I heard. But then he got maybe a couple months off to a year off where he didn't wrestle, and his body just broke down on him, and he was never the same. Like, his body not being active broke him down, and he was just never as fluid as he was when he was active. And I feel like that's what's going to happen to Chandler. For Charles Oliveira, he's been active. He's been having fights with, you know, tough competition. He had a tough fight with Arman Sarukian where he lost that one by a split decision, where, you know, another possibility in this different world where different judges could have been given that nod with that third round because he dominated the first. But given the fact that they fought before, given the fact that Charles won that fight, given the fact that Charles won that fight by striking, and then I think that Charles' striking has gotten much better now. Charles is much more confident in himself. I do think that he is going to finish Michael Chandler once again. Michael Chandler has been submitted for the first time against Dustin Poirier. That was, to me, the key indicator that this is not the same strong, dynamic guy that was just able to get out of Goichi Yamaguchi's, you know, guard and just dominate these jiu-jitsu guys back in Bellator. It's just age, man. Age will do that to you. I am, like, rooting for Michael Chandler. Like, again, he's one of my favorite guys. I want him to knock the fuck out of Charles in front of Trump and just, like, see you at the top. And then he fights McGregor, and then whatever happens. But, you know, he's got to be a good influence for his boys. You know what I'm saying? You can't lose to these non-Americans. But ultimately, I will go with Charles to win this one by knockout. Again, I think knockout to sub. It's just hard with Charles, you know, because he can knee you in the face, knock you out, and then just say, fuck it, I want another sub. And he goes for a guillotine. You're already knocked out, and they call it a sub even though he knocked you out. They just said, oh, he choked him out. Like, no, he's been knocked out. So, yeah, give me Charles by knockout again in the second round. And this is going to be it is a 5-rounder, isn't it? Let me make sure. Yeah, it's a 5-round fight. Again, I am rooting for Michael Chandler. I have his fucking autographed glove right fucking here, right? I'm rooting for the guy, make this worth more money. But ultimately, I think it is going to be Charles that gets the victory once more. Then final fight, we've got Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic. Or Siopic, I'm sorry. My bad. Oh, my God. I'm going to get crucified on the intranets. So 37 years old for Jon Jones, which is nuts to think about. Like, I remember this kid. When I was a kid, I was like, oh, my God, he's 20-some years old. Fucking finger blasting girls with his alien fingers, from what I hear. And yeah, we know everything about Jon Jones, right? Like, he's at heavyweight, he's fat now, coming off of surgery, off of his shoulder or whatever. Stiopic over here hasn't fought in 3 fucking years since he got knocked out by Gall. Another situation, you know, a former heavyweight GOAT, if you will. He's fighting a guy coming off of injury, obviously, but who's been more active. He's fought 2 years ago? He has beaten everybody. Fucking Jon Jones. And as I mentioned earlier, I fucking hated Jon Jones. I hated him for being fucking fake. I knew he was being a fake piece of shit. Had he just been straight up like, I love cocaine and I love cheating on my wife and beating up fucking cars with my head, that would have been great. But I fucking hated Jon Jones. But in this case, man, he's not losing this fight. I mean, it's going to take some like absolute fall from grace. And I don't see that happening. I feel like God loves Jon Jones for whatever reason, because he's never given Jon Jones anything he can't go through, right? He's still here. He can do all the coke he wants. He can beat up all the hookers he wants, beat up his wife, run over pregnant women, and he's still considered the greatest fighter of all time. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, if fucking Billy Quarantillo were to do that, we'd be talking about how he's the biggest fucking scumbag in the planet, but Jon Jones does it, and it's like, it's fine. It must be that black privilege. But ultimately, Theopic over here, being away for that long, I don't see him being the same clean Stipe that we've seen. Like, we've seen him get knocked out by a guy that Jon's beaten technically twice. I think Jon, being the younger guy, being the more dynamic of the two, even at heavyweight, I think he's going to have the wrestling advantage, the grappling advantage. Stipe hasn't really fought anyone like Jon, other than maybe Verdum was maybe the closest, but Verdum's a fucking idiot. Just rushed right into him, and that was a young, early 30s, maybe mid-30s Theopic, and he's got all that power. I don't see Stipe having much for Jon. Do I hope I'm wrong? I fucking hope I'm absolutely wrong, but the play is going to be Jon Jones inside the distance, whether it be first round. And I'll say this. I did pick Gall to beat Jon in the first go-around. I thought, Jon's moving up in weight. He's not acclimated to all that fat. He looked out of shape, and he made it look easy. And the reason I picked Gall is because Gall would present very difficult situations for him that he's not dealt with. But to me, man, Gall just kind of laid on his back and gave up. It just sucked to see that. Stipe's not going to do that. He's a much more experienced guy, a tougher dude. But he's not going to present anything close to what I thought Gall was going to present. Maybe sticking in the pocket and throwing heavy hands to Jon. But if that's the case, I think Jon just pokes him in the eye, kicks him in the knee, fucking bites him, whatever he wants. They're not going to call it, especially if it's Herb Dean calling this fight. And I think what they're going to do is they're going to kick that immigrant Stipe back to wherever the fuck he came from, especially in front of Trump. So give me Jon Jones. I'm going to say I think this goes over, being that these two guys are legends. They're going to respect each other, going to try to gauge the distance. I think it's going to go at least over 1.5 rounds. I don't know what those odds are, but I'll probably take that. If it's plus money, I doubt it. I think this is going to be one of these fights where it's predicted to go the distance, at least further into the distance. I would say second round, I'll say third round TKO for Jon. I think he can trip him to the ground. That's the other thing about Jon. We saw how easily DC was able to take him down and control him. Jon doesn't need to do that. Jon's got more of like the trips because he's so long and tall and strong. He can trip Stipe. Fuck, I can even see him winning via TKO just by tripping Stipe, and he fucks his knee up. Give me Jon Jones third round TKO. I think he eventually gets on top of him, and we get to see that would be the most poetic fucking thing, as much as I hate it, but we get to see Jon Jones landing the Jon Jones 12-6 elbows just to kind of prove a point. Now that they're legal, I'm curious to see what happens to Stipe's face. So give me Jon Jones third round TKO, ground and pound, 12-6 elbow. So those are my picks for UFC 309. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Johnny from Tiger Bomb MMA. Like, share, subscribe. Leave me a mean comment about my hair or some bullshit. I don't give a fuck. But yeah, we'll see you next week. Deadass.